Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to IBC 2010, and welcome to the Autodesk booth here in the main theater. And my name is Bill, and I've got Richard Lyons here.
Hi, Bill.
From Stockholm, Sweden. Who? Well, you're not actually from Stockholm,
No, I'm
Sweden.
actually English, but I lived there for 15 years.
So what's the story behind that?
15
years? It's always a girl. It's always a girl. All right, so Richard's been very kind to come join us here at IBC this year to present probably one of the most interesting projects that we've received for demo footage in a long time. We're really excited to have this.
Long time, yeah.
We also have Joe Billington here from the UK office. He's going to join us and actually drive the flame for the presentation. But before we actually dive into it, play back the final and everything, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you came to use flame?
Basically, I came from another company, competitor to you.
Right.
And then I started playing with the flame around 97. So,
okay. So good
been
long
using
time.
it for a long time.
Yeah.
An old version.
And you've seen a lot of progress.
A lot of change.
A lot of change. A lot of different versions every year coming out with new tools, new stuff. We actually have a new thing announced here at the IBC show, which is something called Flame Premium, which is Flame also coming out with luster and smoke advanced all in one sort of premium package. What's your reaction to Flame Premium?
No, that's very interesting. I think the ability to jump between like luster and into flame could be a very interesting thing to check out. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of flame artists would be great using luster's capabilities. Obviously, you guys do a lot of color grading, but having the real-time color grading is a great benefit.
So we're going to have a look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. We encourage you to. All right, for this presentation, though, we're going to actually get into taking a look at the project that came to us from Red Rum, which was for Philips. It was done for Philips, so maybe you want to tell us a little bit about the project before we play down the final?
Yeah, I mean, basically this commercial that won the Grand Prix at Cannes last year, it was just a great piece. Philips had a very simple idea, which they presented to, I think, DDB, who then presented it to the director, and then we just got free hands pretty much. They left us alone to get on with it.
That's pretty rare.
Yeah, it was really nice.
And so let's play this down. This is what you came up with that little introduction, and then we'll come down and break down a lot of the shots and give you some of the behind the scenes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
end is the beginning. So
see something new every time.
I know, and actually,
I just
really
saw something wrong there.
right, you would. Also, the music and the sound effects are really interesting as
German composer Michael Fakec.
Brilliant,
beautiful music.
Yeah, fantastic. So aside from the visuals, also great audio. So that's an amazing piece. Where does a concept like that start? Where did you begin?
Yeah, so I think if we go over to the keynote here, I'm going to present a little bit, kind of some of the problems we had behind the production and the things that we faced in making Carousel. We started with a brief with the director Adam Berg, who I work with a lot of times, and he basically sent me a piece of A4 with his initial script and ideas. And we've done a couple of Frozen moments before, but very simple, short versions. And then he started sending this one with clowns and cars and explosions and everything hanging in the air. And yeah, basically. But the thing that made it unique was the last line on the script, which says that we have to get back to frame 1. So we're going to make a loop of this one, and it's going to be very long. So
that's the name Carousel.
We knew we were going to do something that was a first here, and so we sat down, myself, Adam, and the director of photography, and started storyboarding everything, basically. And this is very true to the final film. So we pretty much nailed it already at the storyboard, how we wanted to do the film, and we didn't really stray from there. So it was pretty much locked down at that point there. So
you were able to kind of use that on set to block things out.
Yeah, exactly. Moving on to the previs and the planning, which of course was probably the most important part, and actually wasn't an awful lot. I think we spent probably about a week of planning.
Really?
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like that much.
No, it wasn't that much, but that's what we had. So this is, we looked at a lot of locations, and the whole point was to try and get a hospital, because that's what we had in the script.
So the concept was a crime scene in a hospital?
A robbery that had gone wrong in a hospital, and no idea why.
It's weird, but cool.
That's why I'm a flame operator. I don't know. So anyway, we settled upon this last location. I think we had 4 locations that we looked at, and this was the Leningrad School of Communism in Prague.
In Prague, okay.
Which is a beautiful building.
Yeah, the Leningrad School
I recommend a visit sometime.
I recommend sending your kids there.
Yeah, which is an active school, by the way.
It is indeed.
Okay.
Yeah, and basically we went on a recce and we had a look around, and we see here this is the first version of Philips, where basically I just ran around with a stills camera, and we got an idea what we wanted to do.
So actually it's pretty funny, because when you come down this hall, this looks very similar to what you see in the final.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same corridor, but of course it's not dressed or anything. It's people walking around. And then that's the last room that we go into, where we have the guy on the floor.
Right, but you couldn't go in that room because there was an angry...
very angry secretary.
Yeah, she didn't want to be
really
bothered.
didn't like film crews. So when they put 120 meters of rails down and cranes, she got really angry.
I'm sure.
She jumped out of that window.
No, she was going to throw me out.
So this is the exterior of the Leningrad School of Communism, where the location was.
Yep. So here you can see this is where we're going in with the whole move from the exterior. And that's where we're coming out from the small room in the end.
I notice in parentheses it says ish.
Yeah, because we're not really sure yet which window it was.
Could have been that one, maybe the one next to it.
Because she was so angry, she was probably going to lock the door and not let us get in there. So. But it was something like that. So moving on, what we did from this was, after doing a lot of accurate measurements with lasers and stuff, we built a very simple model of the set. And the whole point was we had to break this down. Contrary to what you might have read on the comments on YouTube, it wasn't done with a special machine that can read the entire environment and then texture map it.
Oh, really?
There's a lot of crazy theories that people had about how Carousel was done.
I'm sure. Leave it to the internet.
But we didn't do that. We didn't have that machine. So what we did was we broke the whole thing down into 7 moves, basically. And you can see on this diagram that we have MC, which is motion control. We have CR, which is a normal crane. We have TC, which is a techno crane, and then the dolly wagon in the little room there. Now, ideally, of course, we would have liked to use motion control throughout so that we could line
Yeah.
up one move to the
But
next.
that wouldn't work on the location you chose.
And also the time. We only had 2 days for everything, so we were using 2 crews.
2 days of shooting time.
Yeah, exactly.
And you said you were using 2 crews, and you actually had to finish before Monday morning, 8 o'clock, when school began again.
And we finished at 4 o'clock
right.
on Monday morning.
4 a.m. So
Yeah.
just by the...
Very close.
Yeah, that was close. But still, I mean, it's amazing that what you were able to do in such a short amount of time. So this became sort of the real, I guess, the plan
Exactly.
view.
This is a very important, this is like our Bible in the whole of Carousel. And then we started working on animatics in 3D Studio Max, which
Right.
we then gave to the motion control guys. Very professional bunch of guys that we work with. But you can see that when they've programmed the motion control, this is an animatic contra the actual filmed plate. And you can see here that we're pretty much on target there. So very good translation of 3D stuff going into the motion control rig.
Right. So the data, the pre-visualization was done in 3D Studio Max, and
Yeah.
then that camera data passed to motion control and then utilized, and you can see what a great alignment that produced.
It's just a shame, like I say, we couldn't do the whole move like that. We could only do two particular sections of the whole move with
Right.
motion control.
Right, right. So you got your motion control down for some of it.
And that brings us to the shoot. Yeah. So the shoot, again, 2 days, interiors, exteriors, a lot of cranes, a lot of people running around. We have a lot of actors, and here we were using stunt people because it's very simple. You just hang people in wires and get them to stand still.
Yeah, but
That's
to
how you do a
hold your
frozen
position
moment.
for 30 minutes is not easy.
No, so we're using like stunt people or actors.
I think you said one of the stunt guys was from Gladiator.
Yeah, this big
This
guy
one,
here,
yeah.
the guy in the yellow, the
Okay.
clown. He was one of the gladiators in
Oh,
Gladiator.
cool. That's
He's
always
a
fun
very
to
big
hear.
guy, but he had very small hands.
It's always great to get that background information. All right, so
So then some other problems we had with the exterior, that it started raining.
not
which is
good
not
for
good.
a frozen moment.
No.
No.
So we had to wait. We were talking to the airport all the time for weather checks, and we finally got it lightened up, and we still had to paint quite a bit of rain away, but it was very unforgiving when you've got that much light. You can see every rain particle
Sure.
or water particle in the air.
Sure.
So we had a lot of problems there. And then the last thing, which was a kind of traditional method of lighting using practicals there. So we have a lot of orange 5Ks in the lorry there to create the explosion lighting. Just a very simple traditional method which helped us, saved us a lot of time in
So it was
post.
really a combination, this project, combination of traditional methods with modern techniques to pull off this amazing, seamless one camera
Exactly.
through an environment.
And that's
back to
where the flame did a lot of magic, of course,
Right.
stitching up.
and
which
that's what
gonna
we're going
come
to see.
yeah. So, and the other thing that was interesting, that we shot a lot of frames. So we shot everything at 50 frames per second, and the whole idea of that was to create a lot more frames than we needed. The reason being that we wanted to be able to speed ramp variably the whole piece when it was
Yeah.
ready.
Some of the sections sort of slow down, and then you speed up through sort of the more
Exactly.
mundane sections. Yeah.
And for that we used the time warp in using the motion analysis in the timeline, and that was really
In Flame, that's great.
That's
And now
great.
the other problem, though, is when you're generating all that extra material, you have to manage and deal with it and work on longer
exactly.
shots.
We had, each shot was a minute long, and
Right.
untimed. Then we had the HDR shots that, of course, we were using for the 3D. Any 3D objects, they pretty much had to have reflections, and so we had taken lots of stills
Yeah.
to do this. And then the last thing, we gave the flame to the director and a pink paint pen, so he could annotate what he wanted to do.
This
It's
is
not-
the
it's not
VFX
quite,
wish list.
Exactly.
So this is the director hand drawing on the flame in paint.
Which is
What-
why he's a director.
Yeah, what he wanted to see ultimately in the final. I mean, if he could have this, why not communicate that?
Yeah, it was very useful.
Yeah, that's great.
And that brings us back basically to our plan view, which we're going to go over to, I think, the other keynote here and start breaking this down.
Yeah, so what's interesting here is that you see the alternating colors. So each of those different sections was a different shot, and they all needed to be combined.
Yeah.
So if we go to the first section,
So this is a Technocrane. This is a Technocrane move. This is not motion control. This is hand done with a remote head. And what we're going to do here, as we come around, you can see there's no corridor. Basically, we want to look into a corridor here that leads us into the next shot. But unfortunately, we just go into a little broom cupboard. There is nothing there.
Right. There is no location that was actually appropriate to go 360 all the way through your entire environment. So you had to invent the corridor
Exactly.
for the first shot.
And I think what's kind of cool here is the way that
Can you put your mic up just a little?
Hello.
There you go.
Oh, hi. No wonder you can hear all my funny quips. I think what's ingenious here is the way that you actually use the door to wipe through to the next shot, right? So it's actually a very clever way of using the kind of the physical attributes of the shoot to actually get around the kind of production problem.
Exactly.
Right?
So again, in the comments on YouTube with all the nerds going through it, a lot of people noticed that there was a 90-degree miss, basically, that it wasn't cyclic. A lot of people picked up on that.
They need to
Amazing.
get out a lot more.
Yeah, well, I don't
Sorry
think
if
there
you're
was too
watching
many.
from
I couldn't
YouTube.
find anything wrong with the overall execution of this. But yeah, was that actually? Did you come up with that on set?
Yeah,
or-
we knew we had to do something, and we just found this kind of solution. So actually, not only are you going in a different position, but you're actually going in, I think, half a level of stairs up. But
okay.
like I say, I'm not picking.
Through and up. Okay,
Absolutely.
so now we're looking at the flame, and Joe's going to take us through this first shot.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is kind of randomly, I'm going to do Richard's job on the flame, and he's going to talk about it. So the idea is here that this first shot, this is the kind of principal photography, and I think what's quite interesting about this, having just talked about it, is really just getting a concept of exactly, you know, the problems that they faced here. Like Richard said, this sort of place over here, we're obviously looking to go down a corridor. Okay, at the moment it's a wall. Like I was saying, they do actually use this kind of this joint here of the door frame to actually wipe into the next shot, which is obviously the going down the corridor. But you can also notice some other stuff in here, some lights on the guns and stuff for tracking markers and all this other kind of stuff. But you can see here we do end up back in the broom cupboard, which isn't really quite as glamorous as it should be, really.
Not at all.
It's a nice broom cupboard, I mean, don't get me wrong. But, I mean, so what we're going to do here is we're going to look at a couple of things. So, I mean, just talk us through, you know, your idea about how you thought you'd get around this. Right?
Yeah, so what I thought I'd do is I ran upstairs to the upstairs corridor, which you see later on in the carousel spot, and took some actors and basically just took this still picture here.
So
but as you can see, it's very flat. It's not very interesting color.
Absolutely.
So
and
that's what we're going to
actors
do.
just sort of hanging out.
You
They're
just
not
told
really
him to stand at the end.
Stand still.
So
But
what we can then do with that is we want to give it, initially we want to give it some kind of atmosphere, because at the moment it's a bit orange, it's a little bit flat, like Richard says. And the idea is that we're going to just kind of try and sort of make it look a little bit more like a corridor. So the first thing we can do is really just add a light in here. And this is where the flames tools start becoming very important, okay? The kind of speed to be able to work at full res, because that's another big deal, right?
Exactly.
We don't want to be working on proxies when you're doing work like this. You don't want to be working on sort of 5 or 6 pixels. You need to be able to see the full image. So what we're doing here is we're just kind of maneuvering down as though we're going to sort of light the corridor in a little bit more dynamic way. What's also quite nice about this here is that if we just split the views, what Richard's actually done is he's actually made it so that he can use the 3D model here. If I just rotate the camera slightly, you can see exactly what's going on. We're looking down the model or we're looking outside it. It is actually a 3D model. But the idea behind this is to give it some texture, right? Just
Exactly.
to give it a sense
And
of
depth, yeah.
perception, all this other kind of
And
stuff.
that's a very clever way to use just a very primitive model.
I mean, this is not really complicated stuff, but it's very effective and
Absolutely.
simple
Solves the problem.
solutions.
So what we've got here is a track. Now, I'm not going to do the 3D track in front of you. Needless to say that most of the tracking work was all done in the flame. And if I just feed it in here, you can see that we already have our points kind of marked out for us. So the 3D track has been done. We have a 3D camera that is going to represent that matrix of data that now exists in a 3D space. And this allows us to do certain other things now. So if I just jump to the result, again, a nice use of the 3D elements is that over here, we've got a 3D model that if I unhide it, it really is just a primitive model, right?
It's just a box.
So it's just a box. This is Richard's 3D skills.
Yeah. If anybody's hiring.
Absolutely. Avatar 2. Anyway, so over here, if I do something like this and we attach it to the tracking point that we've generated inside a flame, what we're basically creating is a real corridor, right? So we're actually now looking down a 3D corridor. Now, obviously, at this stage, I don't think we'd get away with this as a premise. However, if we start doing some other bits and pieces, it really does become very evident very quickly how these tools and this kind of way of working is very, very easy to create this kind of work. So if I come over to here and we just look into this second pipe here, so this is my corridor that's been relit. We're going to use that as the foreground. I'm going to use the 3D model as the background, as the mat. And we're just going to pipe these into here like so. So if we now add that into the scene, now we could add it as an image, but in this particular case, we're going to add it as a projector, and I'll let Richard explain why.
Yeah, I mean, projectors is one of the most useful things, I think, in Flame. I use it pretty much every day. And what we're going to do is, what would happen physically is that we're basically projecting an image down a box.
Absolutely.
And what that does is, as you can see in a moment, that it maps the image onto the box in a kind of semi-believable way. And and what we're going to do with our 3D camera is basically leave the projector where it is and then just keep the move
Absolutely.
there.
What we can do is basically, because the image is now mapped to the same data as the projector, as the box, everything should now just move in context as though we're looking down a corridor. And you can see it needs a little bit of work just to make sure that the perspective remains the same, because we are only using a single frame here. But just as proof of concept, you can see exactly what we're achieving here is by actually shoving this image down this corridor.
Yep.
We're creating that sense of illusion, that sense of depth, and it's a really kind of cool way of working.
But we're not done yet.
We're not done yet. As if by magic, we've got another thing that we can pull out here, which is at the top here. We've also got a holdout mat.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a holdout mat in this particular example is really just to kind of allow us to put the door back into the scene, if you like. So we're actually going to hold out the everything and just see down the corridor where the projector actually exists. Yeah. The idea is, again, using the same 3D tracking data, because this is a major point, right?
Yep.
You use one set of 3D data throughout, okay? And that's very important for the CG, for the 2D, for everything else, but it all comes off one data set. It makes the workflow so much easier. And we'll talk about mats in a minute as well, the garbage masks, which is very interesting. So if we come down here, you can see that, but just with a very simple garbage mask here, we're able to hold out the door. If I just turn that off for a second, and we're going to use this as a mat, and we're going to use the original shot as the foreground. So if I come into here and I add an empty layer, this becomes the mat. The original foreground, which is the principal photography, becomes the foreground. And at the bottom here, what I also want to do is, with my projector shot that we've already made, we can then feed that into here into a blur. And you can see we get a bit of a blur just to give us that slight depth of field. We also get a sense of the regrain here, because we're working with a digital still against a film background, a film plate. So we want to grade it a little bit over here. And you can see that starts really helping. And then if we look down here and we kind of combine it all together, we get this kind of real sense of going down this kind of corridor as we spin around this, okay? And you see it's got a grade on it, it's got the color correction and the grain and all that other kind of stuff. And it's a very, very kind of cool little method to get around one of these very sort of hard, heavy-nosed production
It's just a hint of it, so you just sort of see it out of the corner of your eye.
it just feeds us into the next shot.
The other thing is also, just what we were mentioning, is that you can see in here that there's obviously some mats already been made. So if we just come down to the bottom here, we can see that the policemen in here have already been rotoscoped. And again, just a very clever use of the 3D data.
Exactly. I mean, I think there's a lot of flame artists that don't know that there's actually a camera in the garbage mask. And you can use that 3D info on that camera, and it saves you a lot of your rotoscoping.
Absolutely. Because it's going to have your move already built in, right? So you've got a remake of the 3D environment in a space that can obviously then just work and attach stuff to. So this is a really nice example of, again, just using a bit of imagination and kind of relying on some of Flame's tools to really kind of make a problematic shot.
And the other thing that's nice to show here is the context, that we can look at the final output here. So and change anything downstream.
Absolutely. So if we set a context here, like Richard says, what's really nice about this is I can always go back to my projector here, but I can look in context. So we look downstream, and now I can see, right, well, you know, maybe I need to work on the way that the perspective is falling here. And at any point, we can go to the projector here, and I can just sort of play around with it until I'm happy with how it's actually projecting. But I'm doing it now through the context of the grain, of the color correction, of everything else.
Great. Do you mind going back to the desktop and just playing the final there?
No, absolutely. So this is what the final looked like.
So remember, the corridor was a broom closet originally. Just a hint of it, and then we're going to wipe to the next shot. So very, very great use of the 3D inside of Flame to do that.